When I arrived at my sister's lake house, I thought it would be just another quiet visit. A break from the noise, from the routine, from the ache of feeling invisible in your own life. I just wanted stillness. Maybe a glass of wine by the water. Maybe to remember who I was before the years crept up on me. The house was exactly how I remembered it, wooden panels slightly faded from the sun, wind chimes on the porch singing in the breeze, and that smell of pine and old books that only time can create. It felt like stepping back into a memory that had been waiting for me. I was 40. Tired, not just in body, but in the way a woman gets tired when the world stops looking her in the eye. No expectations. No drama. Just a few days of peace. And then I saw him. My nephew. 19. Taller than I remembered. His voice deeper, his shoulders broader. Still had that boyish kindness in his eyes, but there was something else there now. Something I wasn't ready for. He smiled when he saw me, that lopsided grin that always made people feel at ease. "Auntie," he said, with this warmth that made my chest flutter. It's been forever. And it had. I hadn't seen him since he was, 13? 14? Life had pulled us in different directions, and I never thought much about it. But now here we were, sharing the same space, under the same roof, surrounded by nothing but trees, silence, and time. Mornings were quiet. The lake would shimmer in the early light, birds chirping like they were telling secrets. I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, wrapped in a blanket, just watching the water breathe. And he'd join me. Sometimes with a book, sometimes just sitting there, barefoot, sleepy-eyed, sipping orange juice like he'd done it his whole life. Evenings were my favorite. We'd make simple dinners, then sit outside with glasses of wine. Well, I had wine. He had soda, or sometimes a beer when he thought I wasn't looking. The breeze off the lake would kiss our skin, and the sky would turn this deep watercolor pink that made everything feel softer, more tender. It was peaceful. It was simple. And I swear, if you'd told me then what was coming, I would have laughed. Because I hadn't been to that lake house in years, and neither had he. We barely knew each other anymore. But sometimes, all it takes is one quiet moment. One shared glance. One summer night, to remind you you're still alive. If you're drawn to emotional, complicated stories like this, ones that live in the space between right and wrong, go ahead and subscribe to Tales of Lust. We explore the grayest parts of desire, the places most people are too afraid to talk about. This one changed me. And it all started with a visit I thought would be uneventful. But nothing about him, nothing about what we became, was ever just nothing. The days slipped by gently, like warm water through my fingers. We settled into this quiet rhythm, the kind you don't plan, the kind that just happens. Mornings started with him banging around in the kitchen. He wasn't the best cook, not by a long shot. Half the time he'd burn the toast or forget the eggs. But he tried, and it was cute, the way he'd peek over the counter to see if I was laughing or judging him. "I'm not cut out for this chef life," he'd say, grinning, holding up a piece of charcoal that used to be bread. We'd sit across from each other at the little round kitchen table, sunlight pouring in through the windows, both of us barefoot, relaxed. No rush, no expectations. Just coffee, half-burnt breakfast, and conversations that lasted longer than the food. He talked about school, how he didn't really know what he wanted to do yet, but he felt this pressure to figure it out. He talked about his mom, my sister, and how sometimes he worried about her being alone since the divorce. He asked questions, real ones. Not the kind people ask to be polite, but the kind that make you feel like your answers matter. He'd ask things like, "Did you ever want kids?" Or, "Do you ever think about just starting over?" And the way he looked at me when I answered, like he was actually listening, not just waiting for his turn to speak, it threw me off a little. Because it had been a long time since anyone really saw me. Not as someone's ex-wife. Not as the cool aunt who shows up once a year. Not as a woman past her so-called prime. He saw me, and I didn't know how to hold that at first. Evenings were our little ritual. We'd make dinner together, simple stuff. Pasta, grilled cheese, soup from scratch if we were feeling ambitious. We'd play music on the old Bluetooth speaker, dance badly around the kitchen, laugh until we couldn't breathe. Then we'd sit out on the porch. He'd bring the blankets, I'd bring the wine. He wasn't supposed to drink, but I pretended not to notice when he poured a splash into his soda. We'd curl up, not touching, just close. Legs tucked under us, eyes up at the stars, breeze brushing our skin like a whisper. We talked about everything and nothing. There was this ease between us. No awkwardness, no effort. He remembered how I took my tea, 1 sugar, a splash of oat milk. He noticed when I got quiet, and he never filled the silence unless I wanted him to. He laughed at my stories like they were the funniest things he'd ever heard. It was innocent. It was pure. And still, there was something. It started small. A moment in the kitchen, I was reaching for a glass. He was handing me one. Our fingers brushed. Just barely. But it felt like more than it should. He looked at me. I looked away. Later that night, I caught him watching me. Not in a weird way. Just studying me, like he was trying to figure something out. And when I looked back, he didn't look away. He just smiled, soft, unsure, and my heart did something I hadn't felt in years. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was just lonely, a little wine drunk, reading too much into things. But the feeling didn't go away. The next day, I wore this old sundress I found in the closet upstairs. I hadn't worn it in years. It showed more shoulder than I remembered. When I came down for breakfast, he stopped mid-sentence. "You look really pretty," he said. Just like that. Simple. Straightforward. And then he went back to flipping pancakes like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Because I noticed the way his voice changed when he said it. The way his eyes lingered just a second too long. I started to see him differently too. Not just as my nephew or my sister's boy or the kid I used to babysit, but as someone who made me feel visible. He asked me things no one had asked in years. Do you miss being in love? What do you do when you feel alone? He wasn't trying to flirt. That's what made it worse. He was just being kind, just being open. And somehow, that cracked something open in me. It was harmless, I told myself. We were just talking, just being close. But when the air started to shift, when a glance held a little longer than it should have, or the silence between our words started to feel full instead of empty, something inside me began to stir. And once it stirred, I couldn't unfeel it. There was no line crossed, no rules broken. Not yet. But something was happening. And even though I didn't know where it was going, part of me didn't want it to stop. It rained that night. The kind of rain that doesn't just fall, it pours. Heavy, drumming against the roof, echoing through the old beams of the house. The kind that makes you feel like the world is shrinking around you. Like there's nowhere to go but in, and deeper in still. The power flicked off just after dinner. 1 minute we were laughing over our ridiculous attempt at lasagna, and the next darkness. Total, humming silence, except for the rain. We scrambled for candles. He found 3 in a drawer. Vanilla, lavender, something cinnamon-scented. He lit them carefully, shielding the flames with his hands like they were sacred. And just like that, the whole house changed. What had felt wide and open suddenly felt small, intimate. Every shadow stretched longer, every sound seemed louder, the creak of the floorboards, the quiet inhale between words, the ticking of that old clock above the mantel. I grabbed the big knit blanket from the couch. Without a word, he sat beside me. Closer than usual. But it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel wrong. We talked about the past. He asked me what it felt like to fall out of love. I asked him if he ever felt lonely, even with friends around. We shared stories that had never left our lips before. Things we'd kept locked away for years. He told me he sometimes felt like no one really heard him, like he was always playing a role. I told him that sometimes I missed who I used to be before life softened the edges and stole the heat from my spirit. The candlelight danced across his face. He looked older. Or maybe I was just seeing more. Then came the thunder. A deep, bone-shaking crack that made the windows rattle and my heart jump. I flinched visibly, and without thinking, he reached for my hand. And I didn't pull away. I should have. But I didn't. His palm was warm, steady, familiar in a way that was suddenly new. We didn't say anything. We just sat there, fingers loosely threaded together, eyes locked on the flicker of the flame. The moment stretched long and slow, like time had paused to watch what we would do next. I could feel the heat from his skin, the quiet thrum of his pulse. And I knew we were on the edge of something terrifying, something beautiful. But neither of us moved. We just felt it. The weight of it, the wrongness, the sweetness, the ache. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because something happened, but because something almost did. And sometimes, almost is louder than anything. The next morning, I got up before the sun, slipped out of bed quietly, tiptoed down the hallway like I was trying not to wake the ghosts. I needed space. Air. I threw on a sweater, laced up my shoes, and walked. Down the winding path through the woods, past the boathouse, down by the edge of the lake. I stood there for what felt like hours, just staring at the water. My heart ached, my head spun. What was I doing? He was just a boy. But why? Why didn't it feel that way anymore? I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. That the way he looked at me was just kindness. That the warmth in my chest was just gratitude. But my body didn't lie. My silence didn't lie. I started pulling away after that. I kept myself busy, organizing drawers that didn't need it, scrubbing the porch floor, taking long, aimless walks any time we were alone in a room together. He noticed. One night, after dinner, we were washing dishes side by side when he finally said it. "You've been different lately. Distant." Did I do something wrong? I froze. Hands in soapy water. Eyes on the window. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say everything was fine. But my throat closed up. Because the truth was, I had crossed a line. Not with my body, but with my heart. "No, you didn't," I said softly, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "It's not you." And it wasn't. It was me. I was the one who had felt something I shouldn't have. I was the one who let it linger. I was the one who knew better. But none of that made it go away. The guilt sat heavy in my chest. It showed up in the spaces between our words. In the music I played louder than necessary. In the way I avoided his gaze when he laughed too hard or looked at me too long. The silence between us changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was tense. Because we both knew. And neither of us could admit it. It was another quiet night. The kind where the house feels like it's holding its breath. Just the two of us again. No distractions, no storm, no excuses. We had finished dinner hours ago. The candles from the power outage were still on the table, half-burned, flickering gently in the dimness. I hadn't had the heart to blow them out. They made everything feel softer, safer, somehow. He sat across from me, elbows on the table, fingers playing with the edge of his glass. His eyes were on me, steady, too steady. And I knew. Even before he opened his mouth, I knew. The air around us shifted, thick like honey. Time slowed down in that way it does before something irreversible happens. Then, quietly, almost like he was afraid of his own voice, he said it. "I think about you more than I should." Just like that. I didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Didn't move. His words settled between us like a secret finally spoken aloud. Everything in me screamed to deny it, to laugh it off, to change the subject, to protect what little boundary we still had. But I couldn't, because it was already too late. I looked at him. Really looked. And there was no boy sitting in front of me. There was only someone who saw me, wanted me, felt me in ways I hadn't let anyone feel me in years. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might shake the table. My hands trembled, and I folded them in my lap to hide it. I could have said nothing. I should have. but my lips moved before my conscience could stop them. I know, I whispered, my voice barely there. Me too, but we can't. There it was, out in the open now. The ache, the want, the impossibility of it all. He nodded slowly, like he'd already rehearsed this moment 100 times in his head. His eyes glistened. Whether from sadness or something deeper, I don't know. But I felt it in my chest, like something beautiful and wrong had just been born and buried at the same time. We didn't touch, didn't move, just sat there, suspended in that fragile, electric stillness. And in that moment, we both knew, whatever this was, whatever it had become, it couldn't go any further. No matter how much it lived in our bones now. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed listening to the wind brush the windows, the creak of the house settling into silence. I thought about the past, the years I'd let slip by unnoticed, the parts of myself I'd buried just to survive. And I thought about him. The way he looked at me like I was still worth something. The way he made me feel alive, seen, wanted. But feelings aren't always enough. Not when the stakes are too high. Not when the world outside would never understand what happened behind those walls. So I got up before the sun, packed my things quietly, carefully, like I was trying not to wake a dream I didn't want to end. I wrote him a note, folded it neatly, left it on the kitchen table where I knew he'd find it. You are extraordinary, but this isn't our moment. And maybe it never will be. But you changed something in me, and I'll never forget you for that. I didn't say goodbye. Not out loud. There are some goodbyes that can't be spoken without breaking. I walked out to my car, the morning still wrapped in fog. The lake was calm, too calm. Like it knew. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, looked at the house one last time. And then I left. No music, no tears, just silence. As the lake house disappeared in the rear view, I made a promise to myself. I would carry that summer in my heart, but I would not go back to it. I did the right thing, even if it broke a piece of me. Even if some nights I still wake up thinking about him, and wonder if he still thinks about me too. It was 3 days after I left. I was sitting at my kitchen table, same spot where I used to pay bills and scroll through emails and pretend I wasn't aching for something more. The silence in my house felt different now. Not peaceful, empty. And then my phone buzzed. One message. Just his name on the screen. My heart jumped before I even opened it. You weren't the only one feeling it. I miss you. 8 simple words. But they hit like a wave. I stared at the screen for a long time. Longer than I should have. My thumb hovered, shaking slightly. I typed out a dozen things and deleted them all. What could I even say? That I missed him too? That I thought about him every night since I left? That I still felt the weight of his hand in mine even though it had never happened again? In the end, I didn't send a paragraph. Just one small, quiet reply. The heart emoji. Not a word. Just a symbol. A whisper of what had been. A goodbye without saying it. The moment was over. But the ache lingered. Some moments aren't meant to be repeated. They're not built for forever. They're not tidy or easy or even explainable. Some moments are just meant to exist. To burn brightly for a little while. And then live only in memory. I still think about that summer. Not every day, but enough. Sometimes when the air smells like rain. Or when the sky turns that watercolor pink right before sunset. Or when I catch myself laughing at something no one else would find funny, but he would have. Was I wrong for feeling what I felt? Or was it just human? Human to want to be seen. To be touched not just skin, but soul. To be reminded that you're still here, still alive, still capable of stirring, even if it's not in the way the world approves of. Maybe it wasn't about him. Maybe it was about me, finally waking up after years of sleepwalking through my own life. Or maybe it was about both of us, finding something impossible in a place that wasn't supposed to hold it. I won't justify it. I won't explain it away. But I'll never forget it. And I'll never regret that I felt it. If you've ever had a moment you couldn't explain, a connection that defied reason or rules, Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading. I always do. And if stories like this, raw, tangled, deeply human stories speak to you, subscribe to Tales of Lust. We don't shy away from the messy stuff. We live in it. Because sometimes it's the forbidden that teaches us the most about who we really are. And this was mine.